Hello, thank you for being in a new video. The day has come, Galaxy Unpacked, so I have in my hands the 3 new devices of the Galaxy S25 series from Samsung. Let's tell you all the news. Let's get started. Yes, as you can tell, I'm on a custom set by Samsung because we're all recording here. But I wanted to come to this area where it's a little quieter so you can hear me better. Then let me list the changes that we are going to find in these devices with respect to the last generation, which I think will be what interests us most. The rest of the specs that I didn't mention in this video probably remain exactly the same as last generation. In fact, that could be one of the main criticisms applied to this series, that we don't see a very important evolution with respect to the hardware. However, Samsung seems to be focusing a lot on evolving the software and also evolving its artificial intelligence that they call Galaxy AI, which you will see that it will come with special vitamins to continue to draw attention and surely also continue to impose trend with respect to what the rest of manufacturers will do throughout the year. So, what do you think if we start at the design level, where obviously the 2 smaller devices are not going to have too many changes? However, the device that will have more changes will be the Galaxy S25 Ultra, which now bets on a little curved corners. Unlike past generations that had maintained a very straight trend in the corners, personally, it is a change that I like, although I understand that there are several people who are bothered by this change, however. I see it as beneficial because the Galaxy S24 Ultra, I like the Galaxy S24 Ultra. It is very uncomfortable to use because the corner buries a lot in the hand. However, with this Galaxy S25 Ultra, the use is really much more comfortable. This change without a doubt that it is the most obvious or the most striking at the design level. However, we will also see some other changes and evolutions with respect to the last generation. For example, note that the bezels are now thinner, to be exact. Samsung reports that in this generation, we find 15 fewer edges. The new device is a bit larger than in past generations, and this will obviously allow us to have a slightly larger screen that makes better use of space. The difference will obviously be minimal, but it does exist and honestly makes this device become more comfortable and more attractive in the hand. However, the specific hardware of the display remains the same AMOLED technology, with the same refresh rate, with the same peak brightness and everything else. The truth is that today it is a bit complicated to evolve in the high end, unlike the mid-range where we still get good surprises, as mid-range devices are inheriting some things from the high-end. However, ultra-premium devices seem to be getting a little stagnant in terms of the new features they can incorporate. So Samsung has decided to improve several aspects of the software. But before talking about the software, I tell you that in this generation we will also find Gorilla Armor 2nd generation. This is something very important because when Samsung launched the Galaxy S24 Ultra, it introduced Gorilla Armor in collaboration with Corning, and honestly I thought that other manufacturers were also going to use Gorilla Armor throughout the year. However, it seems that Samsung had a very close collaboration with Corning, so it was exclusive to Galaxy S24 Ultra. And now the 2nd generation seems that it would also be exclusive to the Galaxy S25 Ultra. Remember that this glass will allow the screen to have very few reflections. It has been one of the most praised points or highlights in Galaxy S24 Ultra, and definitely in this new generation continues with the anti-reflective finish. But now what they have improved is the level of resistance against falls so that it does not break so easily. Specifically, according to Samsung figures, it has improved by 25 over Gorilla Armor. So I think that's another change that maybe isn't as noticeable when simply looking at one device side by side, but it has to be considered. However, something that I definitely did not like is that the base and plus models continue with Gorilla Glass Victus 2. That is a glass that, although it has good resistance, it does not have the anti-reflective finish. Truth be told, this is annoying because I would have liked Samsung to integrate Gorilla Armor 2 on the little brothers as well, but it's still exclusive to the Ultra. And it is definitely something that I do not like very much, because within the few novelties that we find at the hardware level in the Galaxy S25 series, Gorilla Armor 2 will not be present in the smaller models. Not even Gorilla Armor 1st generation, which at least would have been something interesting. But continuing with the design, throughout the series and this entire family, we will find a more refined and lighter finish. In Galaxy S25 Ultra, to be exact, we will find a weight of 218 grams, that is. It is 15 grams lighter than the last version, And I think that in this sense, they have achieved something quite attractive at the engineering level. Think about what you have to do to reduce 15 grams in a device that maintains largely the same specifications as the last generation, simply by maintaining the same specifications as the last generation. The same thing, but make it lighter. I think it's an important evolution at the engineering level, although I'm pretty sure we all would have liked them to keep the same weight, but increase the size of the battery, for example. However, Samsung is taking this path of further refining the design to make it thinner and lighter. In the case of Galaxy S25 Plus, we also see a change as it now weighs 190 grams. That is 7 grams less than the last generation. And Galaxy S25 now weighs 162 grams. That is 6 grams less than the last generation. But it's not only going to change in terms of weight, it's also going to change in terms of thickness. So, as I say, this trend that Samsung has to refine as much as possible their devices is very noticeable. In the case of Galaxy S25 Ultra, we are going to find a thickness of 8.2 millimeters. In the case of the Galaxy S25 Plus, we have 7.3 millimeters, and in the base model, we find 7.2 millimeters. That is, in the whole family, was reduced 0.4 millimeters thick, which I insist is something that is definitely very remarkable at the engineering level. But I've asked you guys myself, and I think we all agree that we would like an increase in battery, even if they didn't reduce the weight of the device, but that's the decision Samsung has made. Now, obviously a change from one generation to another brings with it also a new color palette. So there we find another of the new features of this series. Obviously, we would have to confirm the availability of colors in each country, but for now I tell you that in Galaxy S25 Ultra is the color titanium silver blue, also titanium white silver, titanium gray and titanium black. In addition, there will be exclusive colors online, while in Galaxy S25 Plus we find navy as its main color, also icy blue, mint and silver shadow, also with some online exclusive options available. And while Galaxy S25 has exactly the same color palette as the Plus model, so that would be another one of the differences from last generation. But let me move on, because believe it or not, there are several new features that I was able to jot down to tell you about. So we now find a new design for the cameras. It is a subtle redesign because it still maintains this minimalist and simple essence of not enclosing the cameras in a module as all manufacturers do. Samsung bets on a much cleaner design, but in this case it borrows the design line of the Galaxy Z Fold 6 that has a textured ring around the cameras. In fact, if you pass your fingernail, you will feel it in a better way. In fact, you could even use it as a nail file in an emergency. And something even more subtle that you might notice is that we are going to find a small elevation in this ring that covers the camera. If you see the device in profile, you'll notice that. Seems that these cameras are floating somehow. The truth is that it looks very nice, although it is a subtle detail that you will notice when you have this device up close in your hands. But the truth is that if it gives a premium touch, although this applies only to the 3 cameras that are on this side, as the other 2 rings are completely glued to the device. And something that I find curious is that in this generation, they have moved this same line of design to the younger siblings. That is, in Galaxy S25 Plus and Galaxy S25, we will also see the same redesign in the cameras, with a textured and slightly sleek ring raised to give a slightly more premium feel, and also differentiate a bit from the rest of the Galaxy family, which although they have the same design line, these subtle differences could come to mark a little more premium product at the level of cameras. Let's be honest, and there are few changes. In fact, in Galaxy S25 and S25 Plus, there is no change, and that possibly will be one of the main criticisms we'll say for the end of the video. But in Galaxy S25 Ultra, we do find a small evolution. Now the ultra-wide camera sensor is 50 megapixels. This means that it will be able to group its pixels to improve night photography, but honestly, it is not an evolution that you're going to notice too much. Samsung enabled a 50 megapixel macro mode as a novelty for this series, and they have also announced the improvement in Pro Visual Engine, which, as you know, is the image engine that Samsung curiously premiered in Galaxy S24 FE. That is to say that artificial intelligence and all the software will try to optimize the image as much as possible. So thanks to the software, we should see an evolution between the pictures that the Galaxy S25 Ultra is capable of taking and the pictures taken by the last generation, despite having virtually the same hardware. Obviously, we will test it a little later, but there should be improvements thanks to the new processor. But before I tell you about the new processor, let me tell you about other new capabilities through software that have been enabled for the camera. We found an improvement in night video recording specifically that will have to be tested later. And speaking also of video recording, it now supports recording in 10-bit HDR and also allows you to record in a log format that is generally handled in professional recordings. So I think this is something that a lot of fans were waiting for, and it's definitely good to see it here. Regarding wireless charging, Samsung was expected to implement the Qi 2 charging standard, and honestly, they haven't made that clear in this preview information that I'm having at the time of recording this video. But hopefully, if it is integrated. However, despite supporting this charging standard that allows wireless charging at 25 watts, and if you want to use a magnetic charger, you should. I understand that this processor can get hot, but I want to confirm this information in particular so that you know it more clearly in the video review or in the unboxing that I will do later. Another new feature is the processor, and in this case, we are talking about the Snapdragon 8 Elite for Galaxy. This processor in its standard edition already seemed incredible and very capable of doing advanced things. So in this edition for Galaxy is even better and more optimized for all the functions it has developed. Samsung, specifically this processor, I remind you that it has 40% more capabilities in artificial intelligence, 37% better CPU processing, and 30% better GPU processing, plus 40 better performance in ray tracing. The evolution with respect to the last generation is very large, and if you compare it, for example, with Galaxy S25 Ultra, the jump would be brutal in terms of the power that is capable of achieving this processor. But obviously, this processor can get hot. A little more than the account when you demand too much, although anyway, this edition for Galaxy is said to be worked to also optimize the battery and heating. But to accompany the processor, Samsung has integrated a 40% larger vapor chamber, this in the Ultra model, to cool it in a better way and obviously get the best out of it in long gaming games, or if you are working with advanced video editing and the like. So I think that also it is important to accompany this processor with good cooling. One last change at the hardware level you are not going to like too much because it is in the S Pen. And normally when we talk about changes, one would expect an evolution. However, this generation Samsung has decided to remove the Bluetooth from the S Pen for some strange reason. This really bothers a lot because surely many of you were used to use the S Pen to take pictures and use it as a remote control. Well, it turns out that now it won't be possible. So even though it retains a button, this button you're only going to be able to use if the S Pen is close enough to the screen, for example, to select text or select images in the gallery. But it is definitely a major loss that now does not support Bluetooth, and I insist, I do not know why they have taken this decision. Let's hope it is not just to reduce costs, right? But as I told you at the beginning of the video, Samsung has wanted to focus a lot on evolving its artificial intelligence. In fact, that's why here behind me it says Galaxy AI. You can see who is the protagonist of this release. According to Samsung, 200 million Galaxy devices already have at least one Galaxy AI feature. Circle to search 1 million people use at least one Galaxy AI feature every day. So with the arrival of One UI 7 in this generation, we also find new features to start generative image editing. That is, when you want to delete an object or move it, it will now work without an internet connection. The processor that brings will be able to do all this, so it will be a faster response, and of course, you'll be with more peace of mind that your image was not sent at any time to the cloud. This is definitely a development to be thanked and applauded. We will also now find the audio eraser that is going to allow you to manipulate the different sounds of any video. Whether you have recorded it with the Galaxy S25 Ultra or you have downloaded it from the internet, you can perfectly edit the audio to, for example, lower the wind noise, lower the noise of people talking around you, or lower the sound level of the voice, or increase it. That is, you have a whole mixer. I'm using a sound system with independent channels through artificial intelligence. And the best of all is that this feature also works without internet connection. Pay close attention to this, because while other manufacturers might start following in Samsung's footsteps soon, I'm pretty sure most of them will need internet connectivity for these features, and that definitely positions Samsung as the leader in artificial intelligence in mobile devices.
A ver, esta es una prueba de audio, estoy en un entorno relativamente ruidoso, no estoy utilizando un micrófono especial ni nada por el estilo. Primero escuchaste la prueba sin ningún efecto o edición de inteligencia artificial y a continuación va con este efecto aplicado. A ver, esta es una prueba de audio, estoy en un entorno relativamente ruidoso, no estoy utilizando un micrófono especial ni nada por el estilo. Primero escuchaste la prueba sin ningún efecto o edición de inteligencia artificial y a continuación va con este efecto aplicado.
They have also launched a new feature to take screenshots with artificial intelligence and have it automatically detect certain objects. Circle to search is now improved because it will also recognize songs. And the drawing assistant that we already knew previously, which is able to transform your strokes into a much more complex drawing, is now multimodal. This means that not only will it be able to receive as an input the doodle that you have made, but now also through text you can modify the result that you have drawn. So for example, if you drew a tree and the result was in daytime, you can use text to tell it, I want it to be nighttime, and that's it. It will transform it for you. And the voice assistant has also evolved. Bixby is now trained with more artificial intelligence, although curiously the protagonist of Galaxy S25 Ultra will be Google's Gemini, but working in conjunction with Samsung system that is in Galaxy, you will find Gemini functions that in other devices will not work in the same way. It's a bit complex to explain, but it's the result of a close collaboration between Samsung and Google. And best of all, it's also multimodal. What does that mean? That, for example, you can talk to it by voice, you can type to it, or it can also have input through the camera so that you make some artificial intelligence request. To give a quick example, you could show a menu of a restaurant in French, and if you do not understand anything, simply tell it what you recommend from this menu, or you can tell it your tastes and what menu option it recommends, and automatically the artificial intelligence will do all the analysis to give you an answer. This does require an internet connection, but it is interesting how Samsung has optimized it for this device. In addition, you could also interact with the system applications and do searches. For example, you could tell it when the next Cruz Azul matches and add it to my calendar, and that way it will be registered in your Samsung calendar at the indicated time. Also, for example, you could do a quick search of a place using Google Maps and then send it to WhatsApp, since it is compatible with native applications of Samsung system with applications. The most interesting thing is that it is currently only with Spotify and WhatsApp, but it is expected that in the future, Samsung will work hand in hand with other developers to optimize more applications to this voice system. You could also, for example, search for a photograph, so you can say, show me the picture where he had a blue hat or something similar. And in this way, you could try to find your photos faster. And some last AI features are the morning and evening summaries. In the morning, it will tell you your energy score, your calendar events, and maybe even suggest a new episode of your podcast or a new playlist available on Spotify. And in the evening, it can show you a summary with the pictures you took that day to relive a little bit of the moments. And I have a little more information, but what I find even more interesting is the Now Bar feature, which is a kind of live activities that Apple introduced some time ago, but now transferred to the Galaxy ecosystem. It must be said as it is, but I find it very nice because, for example, we will be able to have real-time information of our soccer match directly on the lock screen. Or you could also have the progress of Google Maps. If Samsung works hard to attract developers in the future, you could see directly on your lock screen the progress of your Uber or similar things. For now, it works with Samsung's native apps and Google's apps, so you could get a quick glimpse of various items, and it seems like an attractive feature to me. And finally, Samsung has confirmed that these devices will have 7 years of updates. And if you are wondering, all these software features are obviously also available on the smaller models. So let me know what you thought of these devices. Would you have liked any other changes? I think that at the software level, Samsung is definitely the one that is innovating the most in recent years, but at the hardware level is getting a bit stagnant. Personally, one thing I would have liked would be to see a better 3x zoom camera, as it remains a 10 megapixels and with a fairly closed aperture compared to what other manufacturers offer. So the pictures from this range 3x to 4.9x, the truth is that they're not going to be very attractive. I would have also liked to see a bigger battery instead of a thinner device, and of course a charging perhaps 65 watts. But as I say, I think that At the hardware level, Samsung is not currently making too many changes, but let me know all your opinion in the comments. Obviously, it seems to me that it is going to be one of the best of the year. Consider that the Galaxy S25 Ultra that was released in January was able to compete perfectly well with the high-end devices that were released almost in the latter part of the year in the comparisons that I did. So it is clear that Galaxy S25 Ultra could repeat this formula, competing perfectly well with all the devices that will be launched throughout the year, despite being the first flagship of this 2025. For now, we have reached the end of this video. I hope you liked it. If so, you know you can indicate it, and we'll see you next time.